At 3:06 a.m., the stillness in my bedroom was broken not by wind, but by an eerie silence that seemed louder than any sound. My dog Milo stirred briefly before settling back to sleep. I wished I could do the same. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at my phone. No notifications, no messages, nothing. In that moment, I felt like a ghost haunting my own home, unseen and unheard. The irony is, I wasn't trying to catch her doing anything wrong. I hadn't been snooping through texts or checking locations. All I wanted was to share a silly article about pigeons using public transit because she loves quirky animal stories. But when I tapped her contact to send it, a notification popped up. Recipient is on Do Not Disturb. At first, I thought it might be some system error, a glitch perhaps. So I checked both our settings. That's when it hit me. It wasn't automatic. It was deliberate. She'd muted me manually. People would probably say it's no big deal, that maybe she just wanted peace for sleep. Except she wasn't asleep. Her side of the bed was cold, untouched. I don't recall getting out of bed, only the tremor in my hands as I crossed the hallway barefoot, stepping over laundry she promised to fold days ago. The guest room door was slightly ajar, casting blue flickers from her iPad against the wall. There she was, whispering, laughing softly, the way she used to with me. "Yeah, he doesn't know," she murmured. "It's kind of hilarious." I didn't stay to hear more. Backing away, I returned to the kitchen, my sanctuary. By 3:41 a.m., I made toast I couldn't eat. By 7:50 a.m., I logged into our joint bank account. By 9 a.m., every penny was transferred solely to my name. Savings, emergency funds, vacation money, all gone from her reach, much like how I'd been erased from hers. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. I needed to feel alive again, significant, capable of affecting something, even if it was merely numbers on a screen. She didn't notice. At 9:10 a.m., she descended smelling of lavender and another man's cologne. Smiling, she remarked how pale I looked and mentioned heading to yoga. I nodded silently. Silence has a peculiar power. Once you discern its underlying truth, it becomes deafening. And I was beginning to hear everything clearly now. Days passed without mention of the emptied accounts. One morning, I watched her pay for a $6 oat milk latte with her card, walking away confidently, as though the earth beneath her feet dared not challenge her stride. I stood across the street, feeling like a forgotten extra in a film she was effortlessly starring in, a movie we once co-wrote together. I know it sounds pathetic, but I couldn't help myself. When I moved the money, I expected some reaction, a phone call, a text, even an accusatory tone about messing up something trivial like laundry. But nothing, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. That silence terrified me more than any confrontation could have. So I started digging. Not into her phone, which was locked down tighter than a fortress, but into our routines, into what I'd missed while being the one who remembered trash day and overpaid bills. What I uncovered left me reeling. Marlene had been busy, too busy. Consulting lunches became a daily occurrence. Her dry cleaning doubled. She even had a second gym membership. When I asked why, she laughed it off. One's for yoga, one's for Pilates, you wouldn't get it. And she was right, I didn't. Then there was Anthony's shift. 3 Venmo transactions in a week, each accompanied by emojis, fire, lips, a lock. Curiosity got the better of me, and I casually asked who Anthony was. She blinked, then brushed it aside. "Oh, that's from a group project I'm advising. Don't worry." But I did, always. So I clicked on his profile. He wasn't in consulting. He was a personal trainer, the same one she'd started seeing 2 months ago at the newer gym, because, as she put it, the old one stopped challenging her. That night, I sat on the couch staring at my reflection in the blank TV screen. I looked like someone waiting for permission to feel betrayed. Yet I did nothing. No shouting, no accusations. Instead, I refilled her water bottle, washed her favorite hoodie, made her tea. Because when your sense of worth is slowly dismantled by whispered lies and calculated charm, you don't fight back. You shrink. You apologize for taking up space. That's what I'd become, a background character in my own unraveling. But everything shifted the next morning. Not because she said anything or confessed, it was what she left behind. On an old tablet we'd both forgotten existed, buried in the Notes app, I found a journal entry she never intended for me to see. Dated 3 weeks ago, it began with a sentence that hit me like a wrecking ball. He wouldn't survive if I left, but I don't love him. I haven't in years. I must have read those words a dozen times or more. Not because I doubted their truth, but because I kept hoping I'd misread them, swapped a phrase, or misunderstood the tone. But every time my eyes scanned the line, it cut deeper. He wouldn't survive if I left, but I don't love him. I haven't in years. This wasn't something written lightly. It was the kind of sentence you etch when you're already halfway out the door. The rest of the note painted a grim picture. She felt trapped, unseen, tethered to comfort masquerading as love. She described me as good but unexciting, reliable but emotionally dull. The words stung, not just because they were harsh, but because they revealed how little she thought of me. How long had she seen me this way? Months? Years? Had she ever truly loved me, or was I always just convenient? What struck me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how blind I'd been. All those little things I dismissed as quirks or habits suddenly made sense. The double gym memberships, the frequent lunches, the casual mention of Anthony, they weren't isolated incidents. They were pieces of a puzzle I refused to assemble until it was too late. For the first time, I realized how much I'd let myself fade into the background. I'd become so focused on keeping the peace, on being the dependable partner, that I forgot to be anything else. Dependable isn't exciting. Reliable doesn't ignite passion. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to be either. Now, sitting alone in the quiet aftermath of her words, I felt a strange mix of anger and clarity. Anger at her for reducing 12 years of my life to a footnote. Clarity for finally seeing the truth. Love shouldn't leave you feeling invisible. It shouldn't make you question your worth or tiptoe around someone else's indifference. Real love should challenge you, inspire you, remind you why you chose each other in the first place. As painful as it was to confront her words, they forced me to face something I'd been avoiding for far too long. I deserved better. Better than a relationship built on obligation. Better than a love that only existed in name. Better than shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of comfortable. So, for the first time in years, I decided to stop apologizing for existing, for feeling, for wanting more. Maybe I wouldn't survive if she left, but surviving wasn't enough anymore. I wanted to live. The hardest part came when she told me that being with me felt like hearing static while knowing music was playing on another station. I sat frozen on the floor, the tablet in my hands feeling heavier than it should. My emotions didn't just falter, they froze under the weight of a truth that had clearly been growing in her for years. She'd emotionally checked out long ago, and I'd been too consumed with being dependable to realize I was living alongside a stranger. The journal entry was dated 3 days after our last anniversary. That night, I cooked her favorite dinner, bought her the perfume she once loved, and gave her a heartfelt card I'd written by hand. She smiled, kissed me, and said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I held on to those words like a drowning man clutching a sinking life raft, oblivious to the cracks beneath me. I didn't confront her right away. I needed more than just the journal entry. I needed certainty. If I was going to face this, I couldn't fall apart mid-conversation. So I did something I'm not proud of. Her iCloud account was still logged into the tablet, and I accessed her location history. I told myself it wasn't snooping, it was confirmation. The next day, she mentioned a late client meeting across town. She left around 4 p.m., dressed casually, without makeup, calling it a strategy session. But her location pinged 30 minutes later, not near any office, but in a quiet suburban neighborhood we'd never visited together. I stared at the dot on the map, imagining what I might find if I drove there. Instead, I stayed home, sitting in the dim kitchen, waiting. She returned at 8 p.m., humming a tune as if returning from a relaxing outing. She smelled faintly of cologne, not hers. When I asked how the meeting went, she smiled effortlessly and said, "Productive, long, but we made progress." I nodded, asking if she was hungry. She replied that she'd already eaten. I almost let it go, but then I blurted out a question I hadn't planned. "Did Anthony drive you?" For a split second she froze before laughing it off. "What? No, of course not. Why would you ask that?" My heart pounded. I stared at her, trying to see through her calm facade, desperate to believe her. But deep down, I already knew she was lying. I had evidence, screenshots, transactions, locations, the journal, but none of that stung as much as what she said next. "You really should talk to someone, Franklin. This paranoia isn't healthy." Her words hit like a hammer. Here I was, holding fragments of betrayal, and she framed me as the one losing touch with reality. Something inside me broke then, not dramatically, but quietly, permanently, like a floorboard creaking under unseen pressure. I nodded weakly, saying nothing. Cowardice kept my lips sealed, even though every fiber of me wanted answers. The evening ended with me making her chamomile tea, sweetened with a touch of honey, just as she used to prepare for me during my migraine episodes. But she didn't seem to notice the gesture. Her attention was glued to her phone, smiling at something unrelated to me. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat on the couch, replaying every conversation, errand, and forced smile from the past 6 months like a detective dissecting evidence. The lie itself wasn't the worst part. It was how masterfully she delivered it. She was seamless, natural. Even her tone when denying knowing Anthony sounded warm and bewildered, as if I'd asked if she'd met a giraffe named Bob. The next morning, I checked the bank account. She hadn't noticed the missing funds, or perhaps she had and simply didn't care enough to ask. That thought hurt more than anything. To her, I wasn't important, not as a spouse, not even as a financial asset. I was just background noise in her new reality. Then I remembered a line from one of her journal entries, "Taking steps to be free by spring." It was late March, and suddenly everything felt like a countdown, with me being the only one unaware of the script. Later that afternoon, she left for another stretch class, leaving her tablet plugged into the charger in the living room, the same one where I'd found her journal. I hesitated, but eventually opened it, driven by instinct rather than suspicion. There was a new note, brief and chilling. "Meeting the realtor tomorrow. If he signs fast, I'm keeping the condo." My stomach churned. We owned this place together. I'd paid the down payment, fixed the leaky ceiling, repainted the cabinets, and installed every smart device she later restricted me from using. And now she planned to sell it without my consent. What did "if he signs fast" mean? Was it about the realtor or someone else entirely? I couldn't keep up anymore. When she returned that evening, she radiated joy. Her hair was tied up, cheeks flushed, eyes sparkling as though she'd spent the day laughing. She kissed my cheek out of habit and suggested watching something funny. "I need to laugh," she said. All I wanted to do was scream, demand answers for every deception. Instead, I nodded, picked a sitcom we'd seen countless times, and sat beside her like an obedient shadow. Neither of us laughed once during the episode. She fell asleep halfway through, and I stared at her, wondering how many lies could fit inside one sleeping body. Tomorrow she would meet the realtor, and I was done waiting for the collapse to consume me. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wouldn't sit idly by while she dismantled the life we'd built together behind my back. If she viewed me as expendable, I'd become the sharpest tool in the drawer. I called my old friend Roy. We hadn't spoken in a while, not since he relocated out of state, but he was a real estate attorney who owed me a favor. I'd helped him move during a snowstorm once, and he answered the phone immediately when I called. I told him everything. No drama, no heartbreak, just the facts. Joint ownership, no divorce filed, no listing agreements bearing my signature. His response was exactly what I hoped to hear. "She can't sell anything without your signature, not legally." The relief was fleeting, vanishing the moment she walked into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She poured herself the last of the coffee without so much as glancing at me. Her steps had that familiar bounce, the one she always got before something exciting, a spa day or a weekend getaway. The citrus scent of her perfume filled the room before I even saw her. Her makeup was lighter than usual, natural yet polished, exuding confidence. She looked like someone preparing to make an impression. "You have any plans today?" she asked casually, scrolling through her phone. "Not really," I replied, keeping my tone steady. She nodded absently. "Cool. I might be home late, meeting a client and then grabbing dinner." That word again, client. I wanted to ask if her client would be covering the dinner bill or if she'd use our joint credit card, which I'd secretly frozen, but I didn't. I just smiled and said, "Hope it goes well." She kissed me on the forehead, grabbed her tote bag, and walked out as though she weren't about to do something potentially illegal. I followed her from a safe distance. The night before, I'd borrowed my brother's car, claiming mine needed repairs. She didn't suspect a thing. Her car pulled up to an office complex on the outskirts of town. Not a real estate office, but a private suite. I parked across the street, my heart pounding so loudly I feared it might betray me. 30 minutes passed. Then I saw them. She emerged with a man, not Anthony. This guy was older, impeccably dressed, holding a black leather folder. She leaned in close, her hand brushing his chest as they laughed. Then she signed something on a clipboard he handed her. My stomach churned. I didn't wait for them to leave. I snapped a photo from the car and sent it to Roy. 10 minutes later, he called me back. "Frank, whatever she signed wasn't a sale agreement. It's either a rental or a transfer of representation. You're still protected unless she forges your name." Forging my name? The thought hadn't crossed my mind until then. Would she do that? The woman I married 10 years ago wouldn't have. But the woman sitting across from me now, the one whispering lies over tea I'd made, was someone else entirely. By the time she returned home that evening, I'd already gathered every document with my name on it and locked them away in a drawer. I changed every password and confirmed with the bank that I was the sole account holder. When she walked in humming a tune, I tested her. "You're in a good mood," I observed. She grinned. "Just a productive day." Then she sat down beside me on the couch, acting as though nothing had changed between us. But everything had changed. Everything had changed. For the first time in weeks, I was finally a step ahead of her. What I discovered next would take this situation from betrayal to something far darker, something I wasn't ready for. The next morning began like the others, quiet, artificial, and painfully polite. She acted as though everything was fine, even asking if I wanted eggs, a new development. For weeks, she'd barely acknowledged me before noon. When I declined, she simply shrugged and hummed while whisking something in the kitchen. I watched her closely, trying to pinpoint what made it feel like there was a stranger in my house wearing my wife's face. Her voice, expressions, and tone were all the same, yet none of it felt real anymore. It was as though someone had memorized her role but forgotten the soul behind it. I needed air. Grabbing the trash bag on my way out, I heard her say, "Thanks, babe." That word, babe, was what broke me. How could she still use it so casually, as if we were still a team? As if she hadn't tried to sell the condo without telling me, lied about meeting clients, or written in her secret digital diary that she no longer loved me. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and walked out the door. Except I didn't take the trash to the bin. I set the bag down in the garage and opened it. I didn't know what I was looking for, just proof. Something tangible to confirm who she'd become when she thought I wasn't watching. Most of the contents were ordinary, empty yogurt cups, receipts, a cracked makeup compact. But at the bottom, wrapped in a paper towel smeared with lipstick and foundation, was something that stopped me cold. A crumpled envelope addressed to a name I didn't recognize. Mara G. The handwriting matched hers. Inside was a card, a thank you note. "Mara, thank you for introducing me to Paul. I owe you more than just coffee. You literally changed my life. He's everything I needed but didn't know I could still have." I read it again. Paul, not Anthony, not the man from the office yesterday. Another name, another man, another man, another layer of deception. I sat in the garage for a long time, trying to piece it together. It felt like attempting to solve a puzzle while someone kept flipping the pieces over. Why was she writing thank you notes? Why was she so confident, so careless, to throw it out without shredding it? Did she think I was that blind? Or did she want me to find it? I tucked the card into my jacket pocket and carried the trash to the curb. My hands were shaking, but I looked calm. I had to. I couldn't let her see the storm building inside me until I knew which direction it was heading. When I returned, she was on the phone. She quickly ended the call when she saw me. I pretended not to notice. Instead, she asked if I wanted to go out for lunch. Another first. I said yes. We went to a local diner and sat in a booth we used to love. She laughed at the waitress's jokes, complimented the food, and asked me about work. The entire time, I felt like I was sitting across from an imposter. That evening felt like an act, as if she had practiced being the perfect wife beforehand. I nodded and smiled at all the right moments, but internally, I was already devising a plan. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I searched her closet. It might sound desperate, but I needed answers. That's when I found it. A second phone, cheap and prepaid, tucked away in a shoebox beneath old scarves. My chest tightened as I powered it on. No password. The messages loaded quickly. His name was Paul, and what he'd sent her last made my blood run cold. So he still has no idea? When's the move-in date? Move-in date. She wasn't just planning to leave me. She was planning to vanish with him. I sat there holding that burner phone, staring at the screen for what felt like an eternity. Its glow lit up the otherwise dark room. Slowly, I scrolled through their conversation, trying to piece together the timeline. Their first exchange dated back over 4 months. This wasn't some fleeting affair or emotional escape. It was part of her long-term strategy. Every message revealed another layer of betrayal. Apartments she'd already visited, furniture orders placed, moving dates discussed, even debates about which neighborhood suited their future better. Their future. Those words twisted something deep inside me. There were notes about how unpredictable I was, how she needed to leave cleanly before I grew suspicious. She described me as too dependent, too fragile to survive without her. She wasn't wrong about one thing. I was fragile. But not in the way she thought. My weakness wasn't emotional. It was moral. Because in that moment, I didn't want justice or closure. I wanted her to feel the gut-wrenching realization I'd experienced, that our marriage was nothing more than a performance and I was merely a prop. I turned off the phone and carefully returned it to its hiding spot. She couldn't know I knew, not yet. The next day unfolded with eerie normalcy. She wore a bright yellow dress, brewed her favorite coffee, and played the same playlist we used to enjoy on road trips. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't felt like the score to my own demise. By noon, she left for what she claimed was a work meeting, and I followed. This time, I parked 2 blocks away and walked. Her car was already there, parked in front of a beige townhouse with a "For Rent" sign taped to the window, except the sign had been crossed out and replaced with "Rented." From behind a fence, I watched her laugh as she handed a folder to a man, Paul. Tall, clean-cut, the type who probably ironed his socks. They hugged, and something inside me shifted. Anger drained away, leaving only emptiness. A man stripped of everything that once defined his humanity. When she walked in with him, I turned away. My hands shook, but my thoughts were oddly tranquil. That evening she returned home humming, the same artificial calm oozing from her tone. I feigned sleep on the couch. She glanced at me briefly, perhaps touched by a flicker of guilt, or pondering how much longer she'd need to sustain this charade. "Good night," she murmured before retreating to the bedroom. I didn't respond. I just gazed at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her fading footsteps. The next day, she'd believe herself 1 step closer to freedom. But I'd already resolved that morning, before she could weave another lie, to shatter this illusion for good. Not through anger, not through vengeance, but in a way she'd never anticipate. By the time she woke, all she assumed belonged to her would already be gone. She rose late. I was fully dressed, the car loaded, and the condo eerily still. No music played, no coffee brewed, no distant footsteps echoed. Just sunlight streaming onto the floor, heavy with unspoken truths. She entered the kitchen in her robe, rubbing her eyes, looking perplexed, almost irritated, as if I'd disrupted a routine she expected to unfold seamlessly. She asked why I was ready to leave. Calmly, I replied, "Check the bedroom." At first, she hesitated. Then realization struck, and she hurried down the hall. Moments later, I heard drawers opening, the closet creaking, hangers scraping against the rod. She returned, panic etched across her face. "Where are your things?" "I left most of them," I said, zipping my jacket. "I only took what was mine." "You're being dramatic," she snapped, arms crossed. "You're moving in with Paul," I stated flatly. She froze, lips parting slightly, genuine fear flashing in her eyes. Then the act resumed. "Who told you that? That's absurd." "You did," I replied, holding up the burner phone. Her face paled. "You went through my stuff? You planned an entire life without telling me." "I figured I was already a ghost," I said, "so why not confront the truth?" She stared at me, searching for leverage she no longer possessed. "You're overreacting. I wasn't going to leave until everything was clear." "But you already rented a place," I countered. "You had a move-in date, furniture picked out. You wrote that I wouldn't survive without you. Yet here I am." Her jaw tightened. I braced for yelling, tears, maybe even apologies. Instead, she stood there, defeated, silent, as though realizing the final act hadn't unfolded as she'd rehearsed. "I transferred the condo into my name," I continued. "Legally, Roy handled it. The money in our joint accounts is gone. I've left you a fair portion in a new account. What's left stays with me." "You can't do that." "I already have." She laughed bitterly, though it faltered mid-breath. "Wow, so now you're the one disappearing?" I took a step toward the door and said, "No, I'm just finally waking up." Before she could respond, I walked out. 3 months have passed since that day. My sleep is deeper, my meals no longer feel like a burden in my throat, and late-night phone vibrations no longer send a jolt of dread through me. The strangest part? Anger has left me. Instead, I feel gratitude. When she muted me, she inadvertently gave me a gift, the chance to listen to myself, to embrace silence, and to recognize the signs I had ignored for far too long. Revenge doesn't weigh on my mind anymore. What I needed was peace, and, ironically, I found it without her. There's something profound about moments of clarity. For me, it wasn't anger or confrontation that brought it. It was the quiet aftermath of realizing I deserved better. Which moment in this story stands out to you the most? Was it the second phone, the plan to move in, or perhaps the simple act of walking away? Share your thoughts below. And if you've ever felt silenced in a relationship, tell us how you rediscovered your voice. Sometimes breaking free isn't just about leaving someone else behind. It's about finding yourself again.